And welcome back to the Twins Wrap. Derek Hanson with you, along with the television voice of the Minnesota Twins, Dick Bremer. And, well, crossing our fingers, as you and I said, Dick, hopefully we can get some baseball going here.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting week, I think, in terms of the public negotiations between the owners and the players. And the hope is that common sense, decency, and a sense of responsibility will win out here, and we'll have some news, good news about the start of a baseball season here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I thought with the Players Association right away and the union rep, is it Tony Clark, I do believe?
Yes.
I thought his statement was a little bit alarming, the fact I thought, man, you don't want to be Donald Fear of 1994, right? I mean, I think he should have tempered his statement a little bit on it as far as bringing up salary caps and potential, because I don't think that the owners are trying to use this as any type of leverage for a future CBA, or am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. I think it's a one-year deal. I think it's a creative attempt to try to get the season started. But what's disturbing for me, and I think maybe a lot of baseball fans too, is right from the get-go, it was about money, revenue. And clearly, the safety of the players and everybody else that would be traveling and executing these baseball games, either on the playing side, the broadcasting side. The first words out of management's mouth should have been about safety.
Yeah.
The first words out of the Players Association mouths should have been safety, because that is presumably what everybody's most concerned about. And right away we were starting to talk about money, and I think that kind of set the tone for what might be a really ugly week.
And hopefully not. I mean, you think cooler heads can prevail on this? I think after the initial thing talking about that, they're going to understand, because the outcry of the fans, I think, is, when you have people that are hearing that millionaires and billionaires are fighting each other over what type of cut they have to take, when so many people are on unemployment, and many people are maybe are not unemployment, but they've taken a pay cut during this time, so they can help out their employers have a black ink, if you know what I'm getting at. I just don't think there's going to be a lot of sympathy for a lot of the American public out there.
No, and there's always been that chasm between the baseball world and the rest of the world in terms of finances. And, long ago, the common man and woman couldn't relate to the money that the players were making and the owners were making. But now, under these circumstances, as you said, with so many people unable to work, not because they don't want to, but because they can't, they've been furloughed or laid off, whatever, there'll be very little sympathy. And this isn't just in baseball, but when it comes to talking about the NFL, the NHL, NBA, all of that, there'll be very little sympathy from people who are really struggling to make ends meet, unable to make ends meet. And the dialogue so far has been about dollars and cents. Well, not even cents, dollars. And, you're right. There's just not going to be anything relatable about, two parties squabbling over money during this time where so many people are struggling.
And I don't mean to seem insensitive about safety, but I think about when I went to the grocery store and I put a mask on and I looked at the person across from me who was checking me out wearing a mask, who was about my father's age, since 70-some years old, right? I mean, in their Social Security years, I guess if they can work, I'm guessing that you can imagine the disinfectant. I mean, you and I have been in the clubhouse enough. They disinfect the way it was. I mean, it's going to be 10 times that now.
Well, and one of the keys to all of this regarding the safety issue is frequent testing. And as someone who presumably would be going through the routine of getting a baseball season resumed, I would anticipate that I and everybody else involved in the resumption of the baseball season, or the start of the baseball season, would be tested at least twice a week. Now, we're obviously not to that point yet. They're talking about maybe starting a season in early July, so there's a month and a half or more to get it all figured out. But clearly, testing is going to be a key component to this, and how often players and personnel will be tested, and then what the protocol will be in the inevitability that someone's going to test positive over the course of the baseball season. So there are some really serious issues that need to be dealt with, and I think it was really unfortunate that right out of the chute everybody's talking about money when there are more important issues than that moving forward.
And it is going to be interesting by July what type of testing we're talking about, right? Because they've been doing stuff here where people have had to wait 72 hours. I know someone who had to wait almost 120 hours for their test result, right? So it's going to have to be more of a rapid test when you're talking about putting all these people into one area here.
Yeah, and we've been told that unless you're symptomatic, you shouldn't even ask for a test. And thankfully, my family's asymptomatic, and we seem to be doing fine. But it's going to be interesting, as I think we said last week. If there is a season this year, the 60th season of Twins baseball, it's going to be unlike any other season in the history of the game. Basically, the games will be played for the TV and radio audience. There will be, if any fans at all, very limited fan access to the games in person. And it's going to look different. It's going to sound different. And nevertheless, I think everyone is hopeful that they can figure it out and get the season started.
It's funny. You and I have joked about this before, but you would think that, they'll probably start out without any fans, but you would think outside if you could spread fans out, right, and their groups of family members, and then have like 10 seats between them or whatever, they could maybe work. It'd be very similar to the Metrodome days back in 2000. I'm joking around there, but yeah, I would think that outside being able to do that would be maybe feasible by the end of the summer.
Well, that's the hope, but again, there's some components that aren't there yet that would need to be there. Baseball's been analytics driven now for several years, but these are different analytics. We're looking for a decrease in the positive testing percentage. We're looking for a decrease in the mortality rate. And you're not talking about just one location. If you're going to play in New York, things have to get better in New York. If you're going to play in Seattle, things have to be better in Seattle, and in 28 other stadiums, in the surrounding areas, things need to be a lot better than they are right now. And of course, that's the hope that in a month and a half from now that things will be better. But we need to start seeing, some signs pointing in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. Are you a little surprised that it really came down to wanting to play in the home stadiums, considering it doesn't really matter what stadium you're playing if there's no fans? So are you surprised that the things in Florida and Arizona got shelved as quickly as they did?
Well, I think that one of the reasons, you have to have the Players Association ratify whatever proposal you put forth. And there was a lot of resistance from the players, and understandably so, of being, quarantined away from their families for 4.5 months or whatever. Practically, it would have been really difficult to play, 2-3 games a day at a ballpark in Arizona or, whatever, or in Florida. Texas was included in a plan as well. This makes more sense. I think, just to have the familiar surroundings. If what you're providing is a television product, it's going to look a whole lot better, albeit in an empty target field, than it would be in Fort Myers or Arizona or whatever. It's going to make for better television. Selfishly, I'm grateful that this is the plan that's been put forth now, because I got a lot of friends who are in the TV business who aren't getting paid right now, and it would seem like another cold slap in the face if the Twins played baseball in Florida and our crew that we work with at Target Field wasn't able to get any work. So at least, when the season starts, under the current proposal, a lot of people would get back to work, including some TV people that I've come to know over the decades that really, frankly, need the work.
Yeah, of course, we know Marnie pretty well, Marnie Gellner, with her brother working hand in hand with us and a lot of stuff up here. And she's been pretty open about she's never been on unemployment before, so this is a little different time for her and a lot of people in your industry.
Yeah, and in almost every case, whatever the industry is, people want to work. People want to, make a living, and they want to get back to just the basic human conditions that we've, grown accustomed to for centuries. And unfortunately, that's not the case right now. We've just got to uh, follow the leadership that we've been given from the authorities and hope that they've got the best plan moving forward so that if we do take a step forward, we don't take two steps backward just a few weeks later.
Dick Bremer with us, the television voice of the Minnesota Twins here for the Twins Wrap, brought to you by Jefferson Lines. Switching gears a little bit, it was fun to we've been playing a lot of these Twins Classic games. We played one last night where Johan Santana struck out 17, I think it was, against the Texas Rangers. And it was also a game where Gary Gaetti was recognized and put in the Twins Hall of Fame. And he was up in the booth with Dan Gladden and John Gordon. And people may not realize this, but I think that's also where Dan Gladden's daughter met Gary Gaetti's son, right? Talk about that family of 87 twins, and they eventually got married. I mean, what a story there.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly where they first met, but yeah, teammates from the 1987 World Championship team, and now they're even more closely connected with the children getting married to one another.
I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? Just how these things can play out. I always found that story. That and you are not one of the members of the birthday club for Twins broadcast announcers, right? And how weird is that, where you have Corey and Dan Gladden and John Gordon before them all having the same birthday?
Yeah, that was odd when we discovered all that. And my birthday is in early March, so I don't celebrate it during the regular baseball season at all. But every once in a while, we've had a spring training telecast on my birthday, and we've managed to get through the telecast without mentioning it every year. So
doesn't it seem weird that, I mean, we talk about, because my birthday's in March too, but that seems like ages ago. It seems like it was forever ago when you're talking about spring training.
Yeah, and it was a week or so after my birthday. We were in the Dominican Republic for the spring training game there with the Tigers. And honestly, Derek, it seems like at least 6 months ago that we were there, because even though we had heard of COVID-19 and we knew it was a threat to change some things at that point, no one could have imagined that we'd be sitting here, April, May, 2 months later. We still haven't started the baseball season yet because everything was full steam ahead when we were in the Dominican Republic. But, we are where we are now.
Yeah, no question. As far as the players, I mean, I'm guessing it's an interesting thing going back to some of the players, because Mike Trout's been vocal about how he's uncomfortable with some of this stuff. And there may be some players that decide not to show up, because you have a guy like Trout who's making enough money, he could probably take a year off. But then there's going to be maybe these Wally Pipp situations here where Lou Gehrig comes in and takes over. I mean, there's going to be an opportunity for some of the younger players to maybe make a name for themselves as some of the superstars decide that they aren't comfortable playing.
Well, I don't think that the superstars will balk at the conditions. I'm sure there have been a lot of discussions between the Mike Trouts of the world and the Tyler Duffys of the world within the Players Association, and I'm sure their leadership is well aware of what would be palatable and what wouldn't. But to your point, there is going to be opportunity out there for players. Let's just keep this in house, like a Trevor Larnach. Someone like that who maybe wasn't going to have space on a 26-man roster for his career to get started at the big league level this year. But almost certainly the rosters will be expanded beyond 26. And there may be one idea is that there would be a 30-man roster and then a taxi squad, if you will, of 20 more players that could be used. And I think that makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels, because the last thing the Twins organization would want to do would be to have a full year go by without Trevor Larnach and Royce Lewis and some of the other top prospects not playing any competitive baseball. So part of this proposal might include expanded rosters, and some of the bright stars of the Twins' future might get a chance to make their debuts in 2020.
Yeah, no question, because the practice squad was talked about. Ironically, you and I were talking about that a couple of weeks ago, is that the practice squad's going to be needed, right? Because if you got a guy who's just laboring in the bullpen, can't get anyone out, I mean, what are you going to do with him, right? I mean, they just have to have that type of option since they can't send him down to AAA.
Yeah, and if you've got the expanded rosters, maybe the new rule that was going to be implemented this year, where a pitcher, under most circumstances, unless he ended the inning, had to face at least 3 batters. Well, that might get waived this year as well.
True.
Because you'll have more bodies out there, and who knows? We all hope it happens, right? But the games might be 3.5 hours long with the expanded rosters. The art, if you will, of pinch hitting might come back. That's kind of a lost art. It's almost like bunting now, because rosters at 25 included most of the time 13 pitchers, and the idea of having a Chip Hale, a Midre Cummings, a Randy Bush type of guy on the bench to get a hit for you in the late innings, well, that job didn't exist anymore in baseball, and it might now moving forward, at least in 2020.
Well, you bring up, pinch hitting for the pitcher all the time is always a big deal in the National League, and it sounds like there will be a universal DH too.
And that's something I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago too, that as baseball tries to be creative to have a season in 2020, some of the components of that creativity can be carried forward. And, I think a lot of baseball fans are aware the collective bargaining agreement with the players is up after the 2020 season. So the universal DH might be something that would be carried forward to 2021 and beyond.
It's interesting. I'm kind of thinking about this too with the Twins, the way they're set up, and they have good pitching, not some of the best starting line pitching as far as the top 5 guys in the rotation. Can that help you a little bit in a shorter season? Where, you look at a guy like, Jose Barrios, he's always been known to kind of have a tough August, like it's almost like he tires out. But, with a shorter season, could that help out a guy like him and some others?
Well, yeah, I've never run a marathon, but I can imagine a marathon runner, if suddenly, the marathon was 13.1 miles instead of 26.2, it would change, how you'd approach your run from the start to the finish. And I think we'll see that in baseball. I think particularly with the pitchers, certainly at the start of the year, they'll be very, very cautious with them so they don't ramp up too quickly. But, the finish line, even though there would be expanded playoffs, the finish lines will start a lot closer than it used to start. And it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Well, hopefully it does play out very soon, as we mentioned. Hey, if you can say hi to my friend Paul. He's a little bummed. He works at Culver's, and right now the dining room's closed, so he's not able to do his cleaning up the tables and stuff. He's a big Twins fan. He just wanted to tell me to tell you that he really misses you on the broadcast. So, Paul, certainly if you can say hi to him, because he would really appreciate that.
Well, Paul, I can tell you that I miss Twins baseball too, but I miss Butterburgers too. So let's hope that baseball's back and Butterburgers are back and we can get back to normal here.
Yeah, he does a great job helping out people when the dining room is open. A lot of drive-through service right now. So thank you so much, Dick. We'll talk to you again soon.
You got it, Derek.
The Twins wrap with Dick Bremer here on the Mighty 790 KFGO, wrapping up Couch Potato Radio. We got Twins Classic Radio on the way. A game where Byron Buxton was huge, and hopefully it'll be huge when we get the 2020 season underway very soon. Derek Hanson with you here on the Mighty 790 KFGO.